or chapter 1.3, we can start another markdown file. We'll make this PDF, and let's actually just call this chapter 1 overall. And then we can clear this out. And what's going on in chapter 1.3 is essentially the regression model diagnostics to see if the assumptions of the regression model are being met. So first, we need to recreate some of the pieces of chapter 1.1, where we brought in the data, we created a scatter plot, and then we fit that regression model. So let's first have the Stat2 data brought in and the data accord prices, or accord price. And then we can make that, I won't bother printing that out again, but then we could have, actually, why don't we? So print accord price. Then we need to include library tidyverse so that we can create these visuals again. So X is mileage, Y is price, and then data accord price. And then we created this regression model. So we said example 1.1, or let's say this is chapter 1.1, and this is LM price tilde mileage data equals accord price. And then the summary of chapter 1.1. And then we also had this scatter plot again with geom smooth as a way to fit the linear model or the LM. And I'm going to say SE equals false. So that brings us back to kind of where we left off in the previous video. So then chapter 1.2 didn't really have any output, but I will leave this here just as a placeholder. No R output. And then chapter 1.3 is where the regression model diagnostic plots come back in. The simplest way to generate the plots that we're looking for are to use a function that just says plot, and then we plot the name of this regression model. So plot chapter 1.1. And this will give us a bunch of different, there's actually 6 plots that this generates. What we really care about is just the first 2. I'm not actually positive that that's the right code for that, but we'll come back and see. So let's call this chapter 1. So we get this pop-up blocker. Right, here's our scatter plot, our regression model line over the scatter plot. There's no output for chapter 1.2, but then we get these 2 different plots that are generated for us that are very similar to the figures that we see in chapter 1.3. So this first is what's called the residual fitted plot. So there's fitted values on the x-axis and the residual values on the y-axis. So that's the residual fitted. And then the second is the normal plot. So these are the normal or QQ plot. And this is evaluating normality. There are other ways to assess normality. So you can create, like the book illustrates, having a histogram of the residuals to show whether there's kind of a bell-shaped curve. That it's certainly possible. It's like slightly more complicated to do. So I'll leave it to this now, and I think we can mostly get what we need out of here. It will take a little bit of intuition and work to become more familiar with what's going on in the QQ plot. And if you want to generate the histogram of the residuals, you can do that and ask for help with the stat TAs or to come to office hours for that sort of material.